Do you even know who I am? Judge Nathaniel Carter's deep, steady voice cut through the tense night air. The rookie officer, standing with his chest puffed out, his hand resting on the grip of his holstered gun, smirked. I don't care who you are, he said arrogantly. You step out of the car now. Nathaniel stayed seated, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He had been through many things in his life. Hard trials, difficult cases, fights for justice, but nothing like this. Officer, he said calmly, this is an overreach of your authority. I am a judge of the Superior Court. The rookie scoffed. Yeah? And I'm the President of the United States. Step out. Now, the street was quiet, except for the distant hum of passing cars. The rookie's partner, a more seasoned officer, stood a few feet away, looking uncomfortable but silent. The air between them was charged, thick with something unspoken. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, his years of experience telling him this could go very, very wrong. You are making a serious mistake, Nathaniel said, his voice still composed but firm. But the rookie wasn't listening. With a sudden movement, he yanked the car door open. And then, a loud shout, a sharp movement. The world spun into chaos. How did things get here? It had all started earlier that day. Nathaniel Carter had woken up feeling hopeful. It was a bright Monday morning, and he had a busy day ahead in the courtroom. He had always taken pride in his work. Being a judge wasn't just a job, it was a calling. He believed in fairness, in justice, in giving people a chance. He had grown up in a poor neighborhood, raised by a single mother who taught him that the law should protect, not oppress. But not everyone saw the law the way he did. That morning, after finishing his coffee, he kissed his wife, Gloria, on the cheek and left for court. His schedule was full, 3 hearings, 1 sentencing, and a meeting with the mayor's office. Just another busy day. At noon, he had lunch with his old friend, Police Chief Daniel Morris. They had known each other since law school, though their paths had taken them in different directions. You'd be surprised, Daniel had said over his steak, how many rookies think a badge makes them untouchable. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Got a specific case in mind? Daniel sighed. There's this new guy, Officer Brent Holloway. He's fresh out of the academy. Thinks he's invincible. He's already had 3 complaints in 2 months. Nathaniel frowned. And he's still on duty? Politics. Daniel looked frustrated. They want numbers, young energy. But I have a bad feeling about him. Nathaniel had no idea just how soon he would meet this Officer Holloway. Later that evening, after a long day in court, Nathaniel had a meeting at a community center. It was one of those things he did outside of work, talking to kids about staying on the right path. He had grown up in a tough neighborhood, and he wanted young people to see that they had choices. The meeting ran late. By the time he left, the streets were quiet. He got into his car, feeling exhausted but satisfied. He had done some good today. He had just turned onto a dimly lit road when he saw the flashing red and blue lights in his rearview mirror. He wasn't speeding. He hadn't run a light. What was this about? He pulled over and rolled down his window. The rookie officer approached, young, eager, and full of the kind of false confidence that could be dangerous. License and registration, the officer said. Nathaniel kept his hands on the wheel. Can I ask why I was pulled over? The officer's eyes narrowed. License and registration. Nathaniel nodded slowly. I'm reaching for my wallet, he said, making sure the officer saw his movements. He had seen too many cases where things had gone wrong. As he handed over his ID, the officer's expression changed slightly. Judge, huh? That's right, Nathaniel said. The rookie seemed unimpressed. Step out of the car. Nathaniel blinked. Excuse me. You heard me. Step out of the car. Nathaniel knew the law. This was unnecessary. There was no reason for him to step out. But the rookie's hand was hovering near his weapon. Nathaniel took a deep breath. Call your superior officer. The rookie scoffed. I am the law here. Step out. Nathaniel remained seated. He had faced aggressive lawyers, hardened criminals, even threats to his life. But this? A young officer trying to intimidate him for no reason? Son, he said, you don't want to do this. That was when Officer Holloway yanked open the car door. The next few seconds happened in a blur. A loud shout from someone behind the rookie. The sound of something dropping. Nathaniel barely had time to react before. Bang! The world seemed to stop. Nathaniel's heart pounded as he realized something had gone terribly wrong. And just like that, everything changed. What happens next will shock everyone. For a split second, silence swallowed the world. The only sound was the distant hum of the city, the rush of blood in Nathaniel Carter's ears. Then, a sharp gasp. Brent, what the hell did you do? Nathaniel's breath came in short bursts as he processed what had just happened. His eyes darted to the ground where Officer Brent Holloway stood frozen, his hands trembling over his holstered gun. But it wasn't drawn. A few feet away, the veteran officer, Holloway's partner, was gripping his own gun, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His face was pale. His finger hovered over the trigger, his eyes wide with realization. He had almost pulled the trigger. Nathaniel inhaled deeply, his hands still raised. He hadn't moved an inch. But he could see it. Clear as day, the officer's muscle memory had kicked in. A black man in a tense situation, a split-second decision, and his life could have ended right there. The older officer, Officer Paul Martinez, let out a shaky breath and lowered his weapon. Judge Carter, he started, but his voice faltered. Nathaniel turned his gaze back to Brent Holloway. The rookie still stood there, chest heaving, his arrogance suddenly replaced with something else. Something that looked an awful lot like fear. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. That could have been a deadly mistake. The rookie blinked rapidly, his jaw tightening as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. Martinez finally stepped forward, putting himself between the two men. Judge Carter, he said, I need you to step out of the car. Not for anything else. Just so we can de-escalate this. Nathaniel hesitated, then nodded. He kept his movements slow, deliberate, and stepped out of the car. The night air was cold against his skin. Brent, Martinez turned to the rookie, his tone sharper now. What the hell was that? Why did you reach for your gun? Brent's voice cracked, and for the first time, he looked less like an officer and more like a lost kid. He glanced at Nathaniel, then back at Martinez. I thought he was resisting. Nathaniel let out a bitter chuckle. Resisting, he repeated. Sitting in my own car and following the law is resisting? Martinez shot Brent a glare before turning to Nathaniel. Judge Carter, I am deeply sorry for this. We're going to sort this out. But Nathaniel wasn't done. His heart was still pounding, his body still wired with adrenaline. He turned back to Brent, his sharp gaze locking onto him. You don't know who I am, do you? He asked. Brent swallowed hard, shifting on his feet. I know. I don't. Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice low but powerful. I am Judge Nathaniel Carter of the Superior Court. I have spent my life upholding the law, defending justice. And tonight, I almost became another name on a headline because of you. Brent's eyes flickered with something, guilt, shame, something that cracked through his arrogance. Martinez exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Brent, go to the car. But, now. Brent hesitated, then turned and walked stiffly back toward the patrol car. Nathaniel finally let out a slow breath, feeling the tightness in his chest loosen just a little. I hope you understand the weight of what almost happened here tonight, he said to Martinez. The veteran officer nodded solemnly. I do. He hesitated. And I won't let this slide. Nathaniel studied him for a moment. Then, without another word, he turned and got back into his car. As he drove off, his mind raced. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Nathaniel sat in his home office later that night, staring at the unopened bottle of whiskey on his desk. He had never been a drinking man, but tonight, he had thought about it. Just one sip, just to take the edge off. Instead, he exhaled, rubbing his temples. He couldn't let this go. The law was supposed to be just. It was supposed to protect. But what he saw tonight, it was the reason so many people feared those who were meant to serve them. He pulled out his phone. There was only one person he needed to call. The line rang twice before a voice answered. Nathaniel. Daniel, Nathaniel said. We need to talk. Right now. A pause. Then, come by my office in the morning. Not the morning, Nathaniel said, his voice firm. Now. Silence. Then, a quiet sigh. All right. Meet me at the precinct in 20 minutes. Nathaniel hung up, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door. The police precinct was quieter than usual at this hour. Nathaniel walked in, his jaw tight, his steps sure. Chief Daniel Morris was waiting for him, his arms crossed over his chest. All right, he said. Tell me what happened. Nathaniel didn't hold back. He told him everything. The stop, the rookie's arrogance, the gun, the near miss. The look in Brent Holloway's eyes when he realized just how close he had come to making a fatal mistake. When he was finished, Daniel let out a slow breath. He looked tired, like he had seen this story one too many times. I told you, Daniel muttered, shaking his head. I told you about that kid. Then why is he still on the streets? Nathaniel asked, his voice sharp. Daniel's jaw tightened. Politics, he said simply. I can't just pull him without paperwork, complaints, procedures. This was a complaint, Nathaniel cut in. And you're looking at the complainant. Daniel met his gaze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel sighed. All right, he said. I'll handle it. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. How? I'll start the paperwork, Daniel said. Get him off patrol, put him under review. If there's a pattern, we'll have grounds to pull him. Nathaniel exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. That's not enough. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Then what do you suggest? Nathaniel leaned forward, his eyes dark with determination. I want to talk to him. Daniel blinked. What? Face to face, Nathaniel said. If he's going to learn, it won't be through a piece of paper. I want to sit him down. I want to teach him something. Daniel let out a slow whistle. You're serious? As a heart attack. Daniel studied him for a moment. Then he nodded. Fine, he said. Tomorrow morning, first thing. Nathaniel nodded. Good. As he left the precinct, walking out into the crisp night air, he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about him. It was about something bigger. Tomorrow, Officer Brent Holloway would learn that justice wasn't just about power. It was about responsibility. And the lesson he was about to receive? It would change everything. The next morning would bring a confrontation neither man would forget. The precinct smelled of stale coffee and paperwork. The morning shift officers bustled around, answering phones and filling out reports. But Nathaniel Carter wasn't here for small talk. He stepped through the glass doors, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. His mind was clear. He wasn't here for revenge. He wasn't here for an apology. He was here to teach. Chief Daniel Morris met him in the hallway, arms crossed. He's waiting in my office, he said. I don't think he understands what's about to happen. Nathaniel exhaled. Good. Then he'll have no choice but to listen. Daniel led the way down the hall. As they approached the office, Nathaniel caught sight of Officer Brent Holloway through the glass window. The young officer sat stiffly in a chair, his hands clenched together. He looked different now. His usual arrogance chipped away, replaced with something more uncertain. He wasn't the cocky officer from last night. Nathaniel stepped inside. Brent glanced up, then quickly looked away, his jaw tight. Judge Carter, Daniel said, standing near his desk. Officer Holloway, I trust you both know why we're here. Brent scoffed. Yeah, he muttered. Because I made a mistake, and now I'm being dragged in here like a criminal. Nathaniel's gaze sharpened. You almost made a fatal mistake. Brent swallowed. Nathaniel pulled out a chair across from him and sat down. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply studied the young man in front of him. You don't belong in this uniform, Nathaniel said finally. Brent's head snapped up. What? You heard me, Nathaniel said, his tone even. You put that badge on, but you don't understand what it means. You think it gives you power, but what it really gives you is responsibility. Brent clenched his jaw. I was doing my job. No, you weren't, Nathaniel corrected. You were trying to prove something. Brent's face flushed. I wasn't. Let me ask you something, Nathaniel interrupted, leaning forward. When you pulled me over, did you really believe I had done something wrong? Or did you see a black man in a nice car and assume he needed to be put in his place? Brent hesitated. His fingers twitched. He wanted to deny it. But Nathaniel could see it, the war inside him. You don't have to answer, Nathaniel said, sitting back. I already know the truth. Brent clenched his fists. You don't know anything about me. Nathaniel tilted his head. Then tell me, why did you become a cop? Brent hesitated again. He glanced at Daniel, but the chief said nothing. Finally, he muttered, to help people. Nathaniel let out a short laugh. Help people? Is that what you think you did last night? Brent's jaw tightened. I didn't shoot you. You almost did, Nathaniel said. And if your partner hadn't been there, I'd be another name on a headline. You think that's helping? Brent's breath hitched, but he masked it quickly. Nathaniel sighed. Look, I get it. You're young. You're new. But you need to understand something right now. Fear and ego have no place in this job. If you can't control them, you're going to hurt someone. And next time, they might not be as lucky as I was. Brent looked away, his face unreadable. Nathaniel studied him for a moment, then leaned back. You have a choice, he said. You can keep pretending you did nothing wrong, Keep making excuses, keep letting that badge go to your head. Or, he paused. You can actually learn from this. Brent's fingers curled against his knee. The room was silent. Then, I didn't mean to. Brent's voice cracked, and he cut himself off, exhaling sharply. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. Didn't mean to what? Brent clenched his fists again. His eyes darted to Daniel, then back to Nathaniel. I didn't mean to be like them, Brent muttered, barely above a whisper. Nathaniel frowned. Like who? Brent swallowed hard. My father. My uncle. Every cop I grew up around. He hesitated, as if fighting with himself. They told me what this job was about before I ever put on the uniform. Power. Control. Keeping certain people in check. Nathaniel's chest tightened. He had heard this story before. And you believe them, Nathaniel said. Brent let out a bitter laugh. At first? No. But when you're surrounded by it every day, when they drill it into your head that the badge means you decide who matters and who doesn't. His voice trailed off. He shook his head. I guess I stopped questioning it. Silence filled the room. Nathaniel studied him carefully. And now, Brent met his gaze. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Just something raw. I don't know, Brent admitted. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time you figure it out. Brent swallowed hard, but said nothing. Daniel cleared his throat. Holloway, he said, his voice firm. I'm pulling you from patrol duty. Effective immediately. You're going through retraining. And until I'm convinced that you've learned what this badge actually means, you won't be setting foot on the streets. Brent flinched, but didn't argue. Nathaniel stood. You have a lot to unlearn, he said. I hope, for your sake and for everyone else's, that you do. Brent didn't respond. Nathaniel turned to Daniel and nodded. Then, without another word, he walked out of the office. As he stepped into the morning sun, he let out a slow breath. This wasn't over. Not for Brent. Not for the justice system. But maybe, just maybe, a lesson had been learned today. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out and read the message. His blood ran cold. Judge Carter, this is urgent. There's a case you need to see. The victim? Same precinct that just pulled you over. And it looks bad. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. This fight was far from over. What he would uncover next would shake the entire city to its core. Nathaniel Carter stared at his phone screen, the words burning into his mind. Same precinct that just pulled you over. And it looks bad. He didn't hesitate. He dialed the number attached to the message. Judge Carter. The voice on the other end was urgent, tense. Yes. Who is this? Detective Lisa Brooks. I work homicide. Nathaniel's grip on the phone tightened. Homicide? Yes, sir. The victim. He was arrested last night by the same precinct where you had your incident. She hesitated. Judge, you need to see this for yourself. I'm at the morgue now. Nathaniel's stomach tightened. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The morgue was always too cold. Nathaniel had been here more times than he cared to remember, mostly for cases, sometimes for personal tragedies. But this time, as he walked in, there was something in the air. Something heavier. Detective Lisa Brooks was waiting for him, her short-cropped hair pulled into a tight bun, her sharp brown eyes filled with something close to anger. Judge Carter, she greeted, shaking his hand firmly. I appreciate you coming so quickly. What happened? Nathaniel asked. Lisa exhaled and led him to a steel table. The body was covered with a white sheet. This is Jamal Edwards, she said, her voice tight. 24 years old. Picked up last night outside a convenience store. Arrest report says loitering and suspicious behavior. Nathaniel's heart pounded. Which officers brought him in? Lisa hesitated. Then she handed him a file. Nathaniel flipped it open and froze. Arresting officer, Brent Holloway. His blood turned to ice. No, he whispered. Lisa gave him a knowing look. Yeah. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. Tell me what happened. Lisa pulled out a clipboard. Official cause of death? Blunt force trauma to the head. Report says he fell in his cell. But when I saw the body, she lifted the sheet. Nathaniel stared down at the bruises. Dark welts covered Jamal Edwards' ribs, his arms, his face. His lip was split, and his eye was swollen shut. This wasn't a fall. This was a beating. Nathaniel's stomach churned. He had just sat across from Brent Holloway hours ago, giving him a lecture about responsibility. But now a young man was dead, and Brent's name was on the report. Lisa crossed her arms. We both know this wasn't an accident. Nathaniel closed his eyes for a brief moment, trying to steady the anger building in his chest. Where's Brent now? Lisa's expression darkened. At the precinct. but no one's saying much. Nathaniel exhaled sharply. Take me there. The precinct was buzzing when Nathaniel and Lisa walked in. Officers moved around stiffly, side-eyeing Nathaniel, whispering to each other. They knew why he was here. Chief Daniel Morris stood near the entrance, his face hard. He held up a hand before Nathaniel could speak. Before you say anything, Holloway is off duty. He's not making any statements until his union rep gets here. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. A young man is dead, Daniel. In your precinct. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. I know. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. Where is he? Daniel hesitated, then nodded toward an interrogation room. In there. Nathaniel turned to Lisa. I want to talk to him. Lisa nodded. Let's do it. Daniel stepped in front of the door. Wait, he said, lowering his voice. Nathaniel, I know you're angry, but go in there as a judge, not as a man looking for revenge. Nathaniel held his gaze. Justice is what I'm looking for. Daniel studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. Nathaniel pushed open the door. Brent Holloway sat at the table, his hands gripping a paper cup of coffee. He looked up when Nathaniel walked in, and for the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Just fear. Lisa shut the door behind them and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Nathaniel sat across from Brent, placing the file on the table. Tell me what happened, he said, his voice cold. Brent swallowed. He hesitated. I didn't. Nathaniel slapped the file onto the table. Don't lie to me. Brent flinched. Jamal Edwards was arrested last night, Nathaniel continued. By you. Now he's dead. The report says he fell. He leaned forward. Do I look stupid to you? Brent shook his head quickly. Nathaniel's voice dropped. Did you do it? Brent's breath hitched. No. He looked up, desperation in his eyes. I swear I didn't touch him. Nathaniel studied him, searching for the lie. Brent's fingers gripped the coffee cup tighter. I arrested him, yeah? But I didn't hurt him. He swallowed. When I left, he was alive. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. Then who did? Brent hesitated, licking his lips. Lisa stepped forward. Answer him. Brent let out a shaky breath. I can't. Nathaniel's eyes darkened. You can't? Or you won't. Brent's throat bobbed as he swallowed again. If I talk, his hands trembled. They'll come for me next. Lisa and Nathaniel exchanged a look. Nathaniel's voice softened, but it carried weight. Who, Brent? Brent squeezed his eyes shut. Lisa stepped closer. Holloway, listen to me, she said. If you don't tell us, you will go down for this. You were the arresting officer. Your name is all over the report. Right now, you are the only suspect. Brent's breathing was shallow. His knuckles turned white against the cup. Then, in a whisper so soft it was almost inaudible, it was them. Nathaniel frowned. Who? Brent's shoulders shook. He exhaled sharply, then whispered, the ones who trained me. Nathaniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. Brent finally lifted his head. His eyes were wide, filled with something between fear and resignation. You don't understand, he said. This precinct, it has rules. And if you break them, they make you pay. Nathaniel's heart pounded. Lisa's eyes sharpened. Name's Holloway. Brent took a deep, trembling breath. And then he spoke. When he finished, the room was dead silent. Nathaniel sat back, his pulse racing. Lisa clenched her jaw. Jesus Christ. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. They had just uncovered something much, much bigger. And now, the real fight was about to begin. What they had just learned would shake the entire police force and put them all in danger. Nathaniel Carter sat in the interrogation room, his heart pounding in his chest. Brent Holloway had just confessed to something much bigger than a single act of police brutality. This wasn't just about one bad cop. This was a system, a network, a deeply ingrained culture of abuse within the precinct. Lisa Brooks was the first to speak after Brent finished. You need to give us names, she said, her voice hard. Every single one of them. Brent exhaled shakily, his fingers trembling as he gripped his coffee cup. I shouldn't have said anything, he muttered. They're going to know I talked. Nathaniel leaned forward, his tone sharp. You should have said something a long time ago. Brent clenched his jaw, but didn't argue. Lisa pulled out her notepad. Start from the beginning. How far does this go? Brent rubbed his hands over his face. The precinct is run by an inner circle, he whispered. They call themselves the Brotherhood. Nathaniel's stomach turned. Lisa's pen stilled over the paper. The Brotherhood? Brent nodded. It's not official. It's not written down anywhere. But if you're a young officer, you either fall in line or they make you fall in line. He swallowed hard. If you don't play by their rules, they get rid of you. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. And what are their rules? Brent let out a humorless laugh. Control, power, fear. They don't care about justice. They care about showing people who's in charge. He looked down at his hands. They teach you that the badge makes you untouchable. And if you cross them, Lisa's grip tightened around her pen. Then what? Brent exhaled sharply. You either quit, or you end up accidentally hurt in the field. If you really piss them off. His voice dropped lower. You end up dead. Nathaniel's fingers curled into fists. Who are they, Brent? Brent hesitated. He opened his mouth. Then, bang. The loud noise made all three of them flinch. Someone was pounding on the door. Lisa stood up immediately, reaching for her gun. Daniel Morris swung the door open, his face red with anger. What the hell are you doing? He barked at Nathaniel. Nathaniel didn't flinch. Doing your job for you. Daniel's eyes flickered to Brent. Holloway, stop talking. Now. Brent swallowed hard and looked down. Lisa stepped between them. Chief, with all due respect, this is an active investigation. Daniel's nostrils flared. An investigation that should go through proper channels. Nathaniel rose from his seat, his voice steady but filled with steel. How many times have those proper channels covered for dirty cops? Daniel's jaw tightened. You don't understand what you're messing with. Nathaniel's eyes locked onto him. Then why don't you explain it to me? For a split second, something flickered in Daniel's expression. Something close to regret. Then he exhaled. You don't have a case. You have a scared rookie trying to save his own skin. Nathaniel took a step forward. I have a young man dead under your watch. And now, I have a witness telling me there's a secret club running your precinct like a gang. His voice was sharp. So tell me, Daniel, how deep does this go? Daniel's face hardened. I suggest you leave. Lisa's hand hovered near her gun. Is that a threat, Chief? Daniel didn't answer. He simply stepped back and let the doors slam behind him. The room was silent. Brent exhaled shakily. I told you, he whispered. They know. Nathaniel turned to Lisa. We need to move fast. Lisa nodded. We need evidence. We need proof. And we need protection. Nathaniel looked at Brent. Are you willing to testify? Brent hesitated. He was shaking. If I do, I'm dead. Nathaniel's voice was firm. Not if we protect you. Brent's eyes darted between them. He looked like a man at the edge of a cliff. One wrong step, and he'd fall. Finally, he let out a shaky breath. I'll do it, he whispered. Nathaniel nodded. Good. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. And before this was over, someone was going to get hurt. What they would uncover next would put a target on all of their backs. Nathaniel Carter leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Brent Holloway had just agreed to testify, but Nathaniel knew what that meant. The moment Brent's name was tied to this case, his life would be in danger. Lisa Brooks didn't waste any time. She pulled out her phone and started making calls. We need protection for him, she said, her voice sharp. And we need it now. Brent swallowed hard. Where are you taking me? Lisa glanced at Nathaniel before responding. Somewhere safe. Brent shook his head. You don't get it. There's no safe place. They have eyes everywhere. If they find out I'm talking, they'll... Nathaniel cut him off. They already know. Brent flinched. Lisa's phone rang. She answered quickly. Yeah, good. Get him out of here. She hung up and turned to Brent. You're coming with me. I have a safe house outside the city. You'll stay there until we figure this out. Brent hesitated. Nathaniel's voice was steady. You either come with us now, or you go back out there and take your chances. Brent exhaled shakily, then nodded. Lisa moved fast. She led them through the back exit of the precinct, keeping a sharp eye on their surroundings. The moment they stepped outside, Nathaniel felt it. Something was off. The parking lot was too quiet. The usual sounds of officers moving in and out of the station were missing. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Lisa noticed it too. She placed a hand on her gun. Something's wrong, she muttered. Brent's breathing grew unsteady. They know, he whispered. Nathaniel scanned the lot. His car was parked at the far end, next to Lisa's unmarked vehicle. They needed to move, now. Lisa nodded toward her car. We go together. Keep your heads down. They started walking. Slow. Calculated. Then, bang. A gunshot rang out. Brent yelped, ducking behind a car. Nathaniel's heart pounded. Lisa spun around, her gun drawn. Where did it come from? Another shot. This one hit the pavement near Brent's feet. Nathaniel's pulse raced. They're trying to scare him. Lisa grabbed Brent's arm and pulled him toward her car. Move, move, move. Nathaniel followed, his eyes scanning the rooftops. Where are they? The second Brent was inside, Lisa jumped in the driver's seat and started the car. Nathaniel barely had time to slide into the passenger seat before she peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. Brent was shaking. Oh my God, he breathed. They just tried to kill me. Lisa gritted her teeth. Not yet. If they wanted you dead, they wouldn't have missed. Nathaniel's mind raced. This wasn't just about sending a message. This was a warning. Lisa took a sharp turn, her hands gripping the wheel tight. We can't go to the safe house. Not yet. Nathaniel frowned. Why? Lisa's jaw tightened. Because if they're bold enough to fire shots outside the precinct, then they already know where we were going. Brent's voice shook. What do we do? Nathaniel exhaled. We changed the plan. Lisa nodded. I know a place. Somewhere they won't expect. She pressed down on the gas, speeding into the night. But Nathaniel knew the truth. They were being hunted, and this was only the beginning. What happens next will push them to the edge, and the enemy is closing in. The car sped down the empty highway, the city lights shrinking in the distance. The tension inside the vehicle was thick, the weight of what had just happened pressing on all of them. Brent Holloway sat in the back seat, his knee bouncing nervously. His hands were still trembling. They almost got me, he muttered under his breath. They almost got me. Lisa Brooks kept her eyes on the road, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Breathe, she said firmly. Panicking won't help. Nathaniel Carter sat in the passenger seat, his mind running through every possibility. Lisa, where are we going? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took an unexpected exit off the highway, heading down a dark, secluded road. Brent's voice was shaky. Where the hell are we? Lisa finally answered. A place no one should be able to track us. Not yet, at least. Nathaniel frowned. Where? Lisa exhaled. My uncle's cabin. He was NYPD before he retired. He doesn't trust cops any more than I do. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Are you sure we won't be followed? Lisa checked the rearview mirror. I took a different route. No one's behind us. Brent shifted in his seat, still uneasy. What if they already know where it is? Lisa shot him a look. Then we fight. Brent swallowed hard. The road stretched out ahead, winding through thick trees. It was the kind of place where cell service barely worked, where the silence was heavy. Lisa finally pulled off onto a gravel path, leading them deeper into the woods. The cabin came into view, small, tucked away, surrounded by nothing but darkness. No streetlights, no neighbors, just the trees and the cold night air. Lisa parked, then turned to Brent. Get inside. Keep the lights low. Brent hesitated, then nodded and got out. Nathaniel followed Lisa to the front door, his pulse still racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lisa unlocked the door and stepped inside first, her hand hovering near her gun. The place was simple, worn leather couches, an old wooden table, a fireplace that hadn't been used in years. The air smelled like dust and pine. Brent hovered near the doorway, looking lost. How long do we stay here? Lisa closed the door behind them. Until I figure out our next move. Nathaniel turned to her. We need to contact the feds. If what Brent is saying is true, this is bigger than just a few dirty cops. Lisa sighed. You think I don't know that? But if we call in the feds now, before we have solid proof, we risk tipping off the Brotherhood. We don't know who's protecting them. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. She was right. They needed more than Brent's testimony. They needed hard evidence. Brent sat on the couch, rubbing his face. You don't get it, he muttered. You guys think this is just a few bad cops pulling strings. It's bigger. The Brotherhood has connections in high places. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. How high? Brent exhaled shakily. Judges. Prosecutors. Maybe even politicians. Nathaniel felt his stomach drop. Lisa cursed under her breath. Great. So we just picked a fight with the most corrupt cops in the city. Brent leaned forward, his voice low. They're not just cops. They run the city. Nathaniel clenched his fists. Lisa turned to him. If Brent's right, we don't just need to survive. We need to expose them. Nathaniel nodded. And to do that, we need proof. Lisa exhaled. Which means we need to go back. Brent's head snapped up. Back? Are you crazy? They'll kill us. Lisa's voice was firm. If we run, they win. If we stay in hiding, they win. The only way to take them down is to fight from the inside. Nathaniel studied Brent. You said they have an inner circle. You were being groomed for it, weren't you? Brent hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. Nathaniel leaned in. Then they trust you, which means you might be able to get us what we need. Brent shook his head quickly. No. No way. You're asking me to walk back into the lion's den. They'll know I talked. Lisa stepped forward. Not if we do it right. Brent stared at her, his breathing shallow. And what if they find out? Nathaniel's voice was steady. Then we'll be ready. The room was silent. The weight of their decision hung between them. Then, a noise outside. Nathaniel's entire body tensed. Lisa grabbed her gun instantly, her eyes sharp. Brent froze. Did you hear that? Nathaniel moved toward the window, slowly pulling back the curtain. His pulse pounded in his ears. The woods were dark. The trees swayed slightly in the night breeze. Nothing. Lisa exhaled. Maybe it was an animal. Nathaniel was about to agree, until he saw it. A shadow, standing at the edge of the trees. Watching them. Nathaniel's heart stopped. Lisa, he said quietly. We're not alone. Lisa spun toward the window, her hand tightening around her gun. Where? Nathaniel pointed. The figure stood motionless, just beyond the reach of the cabin's dim porch light. Then, it moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. Lisa whispered, Get down. Now. Brent ducked behind the couch, his entire body shaking. Nathaniel and Lisa crouched low, watching the figure's every move. Then, without warning, the figure lifted something to its ear. A phone. Nathaniel's stomach dropped. They were making a call. A call that could only mean one thing. They had been found. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. They're calling for backup. Nathaniel's pulse pounded. We have to move. Now. Brent's voice was shaking. Where do we go? Lisa's eyes were cold, determined. We stop running. She stood, cocked her gun, and exhaled sharply. It's time to fight. The Brotherhood was closing in. And this time, there was no turning back. Nathaniel Carter's pulse pounded in his ears. Lisa Brooks stood by the window, her gun steady in her hands. Outside, the shadowed figure remained at the tree line, still speaking into their phone. We have minutes, Lisa whispered. Maybe less. Brent Holloway was shaking behind the couch. We're going to die, he muttered, his voice cracking. Nathaniel turned to Lisa. Options. She glanced around quickly. We can't take the car. If they have people watching the roads, they'll corner us before we hit the highway. Nathaniel exhaled sharply. Then what? Lisa's jaw tightened. We take the fight to them. Brent snapped his head up. What? No. No way. These guys aren't playing. They just tried to kill me an hour ago. And now you want to walk into their hands. Lisa turned, eyes blazing. You think hiding is going to save you? They know you're talking. They won't stop until we're dead. And right now, our best shot is catching them off guard. Brent's breathing was rapid, panicked. I can't do this. Nathaniel knelt in front of him, grabbing his shoulders. Yes, you can. Brent shook his head. I didn't sign up for this. I'm not a hero. Nathaniel's voice was firm but calm. Neither am I. But if we don't stand up now, no one will. Brent swallowed hard. Lisa peered back out the window. They're still there. We don't have time for a debate. Nathaniel straightened. We fight smart. Not reckless. Lisa nodded. The shed out back. It's stocked with supplies. My uncle never trusted anyone, so he kept everything from extra fuel to hunting rifles. Nathaniel exhaled. Good. That gives us something. Brent hesitated. So what's the plan? Lisa's eyes flickered toward the dark woods. We move fast. We don't give them time to regroup. And we make damn sure they don't leave this place thinking they're untouchable. Nathaniel turned to Brent. Are you in? Brent hesitated. He looked down at his shaking hands. Then, finally, he nodded. I'm in. Lisa moved first, leading them toward the back door. She eased it open, checking their surroundings before signaling them forward. The night air was cold against Nathaniel's skin. The shed was only 30 yards away, but every step felt like an eternity. Halfway there, Lisa froze. Nathaniel followed her gaze. A second shadow had appeared near the trees. Nathaniel's stomach dropped. They brought backup. Lisa exhaled sharply. We have to move now. They sprinted the last few feet to the shed. Lisa yanked open the door and shoved them inside. Brent doubled over, panting. We're dead. We're so dead. Lisa ignored him and flipped on a small lantern. The inside of the shed was packed with old wooden crates and metal shelves lined with gear. She moved fast, grabbing a shotgun from the rack. Take what you can carry. Nathaniel scanned the shelves. A hunting rifle, extra ammunition, a combat knife. He grabbed them all. Brent hesitated. I don't know how to use this stuff. Lisa shoved a handgun into his hands. Then learned fast. Nathaniel pulled back the rifle's bolt, loading a round into the chamber. He had never been a man of violence, but tonight, he wasn't sure he had a choice. Lisa turned toward the door. They're coming. Nathaniel followed her gaze. The first shadowed figure was moving toward the cabin now. The second was circling wide. Lisa's voice was low. We need to take control before they box us in. Nathaniel nodded. What do you suggest? Lisa's eyes were cold, calculating. We hit first. Brent inhaled sharply. You mean? Lisa didn't let him finish. She kicked the shed door open, raised her shotgun, and fired. The shot echoed through the trees. The first figure ducked, then dove behind a car. Nathaniel's heart pounded. This is real now. Lisa moved fast, darting toward the side of the cabin. Cover me. Nathaniel raised the rifle and fired a warning shot toward the second figure. Brent pressed himself against the shed wall, gripping the handgun with white knuckles. Oh my God. Oh my God. Nathaniel turned to him. Brent, listen to me. You can do this, but you have to stay focused. Brent swallowed hard, then nodded. Lisa fired another shot, forcing the first attacker to retreat. We need to take one down before more arrive. Nathaniel took a deep breath and aimed. The second figure stepped into the open, just for a moment. Nathaniel squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out. The figure grunted and stumbled back, dropping to a knee. Lisa turned, eyes wide. Nice shot. Nathaniel's chest heaved. He had never shot at a person before. He had never needed to. But tonight, survival was the only thing that mattered. The first attacker took off running, disappearing into the woods. Lisa cursed. They'll be back. Brent was shaking, but he was still standing. What do we do now? Nathaniel exhaled. We don't wait for them. Lisa nodded. We track them down before they regroup. Nathaniel's voice was steady. We finish this. The hunt had begun, and before the night was over, someone wouldn't make it out alive. The night had turned deadly. Nathaniel Carter gripped the rifle tighter, his pulse pounding in his ears. They had fought back, sent a message to the Brotherhood that they weren't going down without a fight, but this was far from over. Lisa Brooks crouched near the edge of the cabin, scanning the dark woods. They're running, but not for long. Brent Holloway was still shaking, his fingers locked around the grip of the handgun Lisa had given him. I can't do this, he muttered under his breath. I'm not built for this. Nathaniel turned to him, his voice firm. Brent, listen to me. You have two choices right now. You can freeze, and they'll find you helpless. Or you can stand up and fight. Which one do you want? Brent's breath was unsteady. Lisa didn't wait for an answer. She reloaded her shotgun. We don't have time for pep talks. We need to track them now before they call for more backup. Nathaniel exhaled sharply. Which way did they go? Lisa pointed toward the woods. They're heading downhill, toward the river. If we move fast, we can catch them before they regroup. Brent swallowed hard. And then what? Kill them. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. We don't shoot unless we have to. But we need answers. Lisa nodded. We take one alive. Brent exhaled shakily, but he followed as they moved into the woods. The night was silent except for their footsteps and the distant rustle of leaves. The forest was thick, shadows stretching in every direction. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Lisa moved ahead, her shotgun raised. Stay close, she whispered. Nathaniel stayed behind Brent, keeping a steady hand on his rifle. Minutes passed. Then, a noise. Nathaniel's muscles tensed. He turned his head, listening. The faint snap of a twig. Someone was nearby. Lisa froze, holding up a fist. Stop. Brent stiffened. Nathaniel scanned the darkness. Where? Lisa pointed to a large tree up ahead. There. Nathaniel exhaled. Let's flush them out. Lisa nodded. Cover me. She moved swiftly, circling around the tree. Nathaniel and Brent stayed low, aiming their weapons. Then, Lisa lunged forward, grabbing a figure by the collar and yanking them into the open. Brent gasped. The man she had caught was bleeding from the leg, the one Nathaniel had shot earlier. He grunted in pain, his face twisted in anger. Lisa pressed the shotgun to his chest. Move, and I end you. The man sneered. You have no idea what you're messing with. Nathaniel stepped forward. Then why don't you enlighten us? The man spat blood onto the ground. You think this ends tonight? You think you've won? He laughed, dark and bitter. You're all dead already. Brent swallowed hard. Who are you? The man smirked. Someone who follows orders. Lisa pressed the shotgun harder against him. Who's giving them? The man's smirk widened. Wouldn't you like to know? Nathaniel stepped closer. We already know about the Brotherhood. The man's smile faltered slightly. Lisa caught it. Yeah, that's right. We know what you are. And we're going to expose every last one of you. The man chuckled, shaking his head. You have no idea how deep this goes. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. Then tell us. The man's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. No. Then, before anyone could react, he lunged. Lisa fired. The gunshot echoed through the trees. The man crumpled to the ground. Brent let out a choked gasp, stumbling backward. Oh my God. Nathaniel's heart pounded. He turned to Lisa. You didn't have a choice. Lisa's jaw was tight. I needed him alive. Nathaniel exhaled sharply. It's too late now. Lisa cursed under her breath. Brent looked like he was about to be sick. What if more are coming? Lisa reloaded her shotgun. Then we're ready. Nathaniel scanned the woods. The night was eerily silent. Then, from the distance, a faint sound. Engines. Nathaniel's blood ran cold. Lisa tensed. They're coming. Brent swallowed hard. What do we do now? Nathaniel exhaled. We finish what we started. The final battle was coming, and no one was walking away unscathed. The sound of engines grew louder, the rumble vibrating through the trees. Nathaniel Carter tightened his grip on the rifle, his pulse hammering. Lisa Brooks rechecked her shotgun, her jaw set in stone. They're bringing more, she muttered. Probably a whole team. Brent Holloway's breathing was shallow. He looked frozen. We can't fight all of them. Nathaniel turned to him, his voice steady. We're not fighting to win a war, Brent. We're fighting to survive the night. Lisa glanced at the dark road beyond the trees. They're coming from the east. We have two choices, stand our ground or move deeper into the forest. Nathaniel thought fast. Staying meant being outnumbered. Running gave them a chance to reposition. But with Brent slowing them down, we need to move, he decided. Now. Lisa nodded. Let's go. She grabbed Brent's arm, yanking him to his feet. They ran. The forest stretched out ahead of them, thick and unwelcoming. Every snap of a twig felt like a gunshot in the night. Behind them, the low hum of engines stopped. Doors slammed. Shouting voices. Lisa whispered, They're fanning out. Nathaniel's mind raced. The Brotherhood wouldn't be reckless. They wouldn't fire blindly into the woods. Not yet. But they would hunt. Brent tripped over a root, falling hard. Lisa yanked him up. Keep moving. They pressed on, deeper into the forest. The farther they got, the darker it became. The trees swallowed them whole. Then, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness behind them. Nathaniel barely had time to react. A gunshot rang out. The bullet slammed into a tree inches from Brent's head. Brent yelped, ducking low. They're shooting at me. Lisa pulled her gun. No more running. Nathaniel turned. Cover positions. We ambushed them. Lisa and Brent dove behind fallen logs. Nathaniel crouched behind a tree, aiming his rifle into the darkness. Footsteps crunched over leaves. Voices whispered. Then, a shadow moved. Nathaniel squeezed the trigger. The shot ripped through the night. A man grunted, dropping to the ground. Another gunshot exploded from the right. Lisa fired back. The shot hit its mark. A scream. Then, silence. Nathaniel's breathing was fast, controlled. How many left? Lisa peered through the darkness. 2. Maybe 3. Brent was shaking, gripping his gun like it was a lifeline. Nathaniel whispered, Brent, you have a gun. You have a chance. But if you freeze, you're dead. Brent exhaled sharply, then nodded. A shadow moved again. Lisa fired first. The man staggered, clutching his side, but didn't go down. Nathaniel turned to Brent. Now. Brent hesitated, just for a second. Then, he raised the gun and pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the man in the chest. He collapsed. Brent's hands were trembling. His breaths came in sharp gasps. Nathaniel put a hand on his shoulder. You did what you had to. Brent exhaled. I think I'm going to be sick. Lisa scanned the area. We need to move. Now. Nathaniel nodded. This isn't over. Lisa's voice was sharp. Not even close. They disappeared deeper into the trees. The Brotherhood wouldn't stop, and the real war was still coming. The next time they met, it would be for the final showdown. The forest was eerily silent now. Nathaniel Carter led the way through the trees, his rifle still clutched tightly in his hands. Brent Holloway was still shaking from the shot he had fired, but he was moving. That was enough for now. Lisa Brooks whispered, "We need to find shelter. Fast." Nathaniel nodded. The Brotherhood wasn't done hunting them. The only reason they weren't already under attack was because the remaining members were regrouping, planning, and that meant the final fight was coming. Brent exhaled shakily. Where do we even go? Lisa pulled out a small flashlight, shielding it with her hand to keep the glow dim. My uncle had an old hunting bunker. Not far. It's underground, stocked with supplies. Nathaniel's eyes sharpened. That's where we make our stand. Brent swallowed hard. And if they find us there? Lisa's expression was grim. Then we go down fighting. They moved fast. The bunker was hidden beneath a thick layer of brush, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Lisa knelt and pushed the debris aside, revealing a heavy steel hatch. Inside, she whispered. Nathaniel climbed down first, gripping the cold iron ladder. His boots hit the concrete floor with a soft thud. The air was stale, untouched for years. Lisa followed next, pulling Brent in after her before sealing the hatch above them. The bunker was small, just a single room with old crates, water canisters, and a battered radio. A dusty lantern sat on a table. Lisa lit it, casting flickering shadows against the walls. Brent collapsed onto a chair, still breathing heavily. I can't believe I shot someone. Nathaniel crouched in front of him. You didn't have a choice. Brent wiped a hand down his face. I don't even know who I am anymore. Lisa set her shotgun down. You're still you, Brent. But now, you see the world for what it really is. Silence settled over them. Nathaniel turned to Lisa. How long before they find us? Lisa exhaled. Depends. If they're desperate, they'll sweep the entire forest. If they're smart, they'll wait us out. Nathaniel frowned. They don't seem like the patient type. Lisa nodded. Exactly. Which means we don't wait. We strike first. Brent's head snapped up. What? Nathaniel understood immediately. You're saying we bring the fight to them. Lisa's eyes were sharp. Yes. Brent looked between them. Are you two insane? There are more of them. Probably heavily armed. Lisa's voice was cold. And if we wait here, they win. Nathaniel inhaled deeply. We don't need to take them all out. We just need to take out the head. Lisa nodded. We get the leader. The rest crumble. Brent let out a humorless laugh. Oh yeah, sure, easy. Just take down a criminal organization from the inside. Nathaniel's voice was steady. That's exactly what we're going to do. Brent rubbed his face. Do we even know who's in charge? Lisa hesitated. I have a name. Nathaniel's eyes locked onto her. Who? Lisa's jaw clenched. Captain Lawrence Reeves. Brent's entire body went stiff. No. Nathaniel frowned. Who is he? Brent swallowed hard. The real leader of the Brotherhood. The one calling the shots. He doesn't just control this precinct. He controls half the city. Nathaniel's stomach turned. Then he's our target. Lisa checked her weapon. We find him. We take him down. Brent exhaled sharply. This is suicide. Nathaniel met his gaze. Maybe, but it's the only way this ends. Silence. Then, a noise outside. Nathaniel froze. Brent's breathing hitched. They found us. Lisa killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed the bunker. Footsteps. Rustling. Voices. Nathaniel's pulse pounded. Lisa whispered, "Get ready." A shadow moved outside the hatch. Then, the first shot rang out. The final battle had begun, and only one side would make it out alive. The first gunshot shattered the silence. Nathaniel Carter hit the floor just as the bunker hatch shook violently. Someone was trying to force their way in. Lisa Brooks moved fast, shoving a crate against the hatch. "They're here," she hissed. Brent Holloway was frozen in place, his eyes wide with terror. "We're trapped," he breathed. Nathaniel reached for his rifle, his mind working fast. Not yet. Another shot. This one splintered the metal hatch. Lisa cursed under her breath. "They're coming in." Nathaniel looked around. The bunker was small, but it had one advantage, the narrow entryway. If they bottlenecked the attackers, they had a chance. He turned to Lisa. "We hold this position. No one gets through." Lisa nodded, gripping her shotgun. "We make every shot count." Brent swallowed hard, gripping his handgun like a lifeline. "I don't want to die," he whispered. Nathaniel looked him in the eyes. "Then fight." The next moment, the hatch burst open. The first attacker dropped in fast, his weapon raised. Lisa fired first. The shotgun blast sent the man flying back, blood spraying against the bunker wall. A second attacker jumped in immediately. Nathaniel fired his rifle. The bullet tore through the man's shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. More were coming. Brent let out a shaky breath. Oh God. Nathaniel didn't hesitate. Brent now. Brent squeezed his eyes shut and fired. The bullet caught the third attacker in the leg. The man screamed, collapsing onto the floor. Lisa turned to Nathaniel. We can't hold them forever. Nathaniel's mind raced. They were outnumbered. They needed another way out. Then he remembered. Lisa, the back wall, your uncle's supply hatch. Is it still there? Lisa's eyes widened. You're right. She turned and ran to the back of the bunker, shoving aside crates. Nathaniel and Brent kept firing, keeping the attackers at bay. Then, Lisa found it. An old, rusted emergency escape hatch, hidden behind wooden panels. Lisa kicked it open. Fresh air rushed in. Nathaniel grabbed Brent. Go. Now. Brent didn't hesitate this time. He scrambled through the opening. Lisa fired one last shot before following him. Nathaniel was last. He turned, firing one more round, then disappeared into the night. They ran through the woods, their breaths ragged, their bodies fueled by adrenaline. Behind them, the bunker exploded in gunfire. The Brotherhood had lost them. Lisa led the way, moving fast. We can't stop now. Reeves won't give up. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. Then we don't give him the chance. Brent gasped for air. What do you mean? Nathaniel's eyes were cold. We end this. Tonight. Lisa nodded. We go after Reeves. Brent let out a humorless laugh. And how the hell do we do that? Lisa pulled out her phone. By making sure the world sees exactly who he is. Nathaniel understood immediately. We expose him. Lisa smirked. And I have the perfect way to do it. 1 hour later. Captain Lawrence Reeves sat in his private office at the precinct, sipping whiskey. His phone buzzed. He frowned and picked it up. The message was simple. Turn on the news. Reeves grabbed the remote, switching on the television. The screen flickered. Then, his face appeared. A grainy security video. Him, giving orders. Talking about silencing Holloway. His breath hitched. The news anchor's voice was sharp. This just in, exclusive footage exposes a deep-rooted corruption scandal within the police department. Captain Lawrence Reeves, suspected leader of a secret group known as the Brotherhood, is accused of ordering the deaths of multiple civilians, including former officer Brent Holloway. Reeves dropped his glass. His phone rang. He picked it up with shaking hands. Who is this? Nathaniel Carter's voice was cold. Your time is up. Reeves' breath came fast. You don't understand what you've done. Nathaniel's voice was steady. Oh, I understand perfectly. You're finished. The line went dead. Sirens wailed outside. The door burst open. Officers flooded in. Reeves reached for his gun. Don't even think about it. The officers surrounded him. His own men, turning against him. It was over. Nathaniel, Lisa, and Brent watched the news from a motel room across the city. Brent exhaled slowly. We actually did it. Lisa smirked. Told you. Nathaniel leaned back, watching as Reeves was let out in handcuffs. The Brotherhood was over. Justice had won. Brent let out a breath. So what now? Nathaniel looked out the window. The city stretched before him, still broken, still flawed. But for the first time in a long time, there was hope. We rebuild, he said. Lisa nodded. Brent smiled for the first time. Nathaniel exhaled. It was finally over.